Hi everyone, it's Gary here, and a very warm welcome back to the fourth official. Now, joining me on this show, once again returning back after popular demand from their last visit here on the show, is Aberdeen fan, broadcaster, and new Radio 1 DJ, Beth Wallace. Warm welcome back, Beth.
Hello, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Now, people that saw Beth on the fourth official the last time will know we had her on just before the Premier Sports Cup semi-final, where we were talking about Aberdeen's draw and against Celtic and the league, and obviously having Celtic again in the cup semi, which didn't go particularly well. And I think it's fair to say since then the form of Jimmy Tilleen's Aberdeen side has kind of fallen off a bit of a cliff from what was a very positive start to the season. And Aberdeen were back in Glasgow on Wednesday night, taking on Philippe Clement's Rangers side. Finished 3-0 to Rangers, but it was a game I think that summed an awful lot up about kind of both teams' seasons so far. I think from a Rangers perspective, missed opportunities, not taking chances, injuries, bad decisions from referees, and I think from an Aberdeen perspective, just a complete lack of confidence. I think, particularly in forward areas, new players obviously still trying to get to grips with Scottish football, and I think it was a game where if you were a bit of a neutral, I think you saw the good, the bad, and the ugly of kind of both sides across this season.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, a 3-0 win obviously is still a good win for Rangers as well. So credit to them for that, which is not something that I like to say very often, but you have to do it when the credit is given. From an Aberdeen perspective, I didn't have high hopes going into the game. I didn't expect to win the game. I didn't think this was the point that Aberdeen would turn it around because there's really no confidence there. There's a lot of things that are getting sorted, a lot of new guys coming in. I have seen bits of improvement in the past couple of games from Aberdeen, bits, but there still is a lot of work to be done. But yeah, definitely not how I wanted my even to go yesterday.
Yeah, I think what can really kind of sum the game up, I think, from our perspective, was that opening goal that Hamza Igamane scored for Rangers. Not the greatest, I think, the defending from Aberdeen in terms of allowing a kind of bit of a loose ball in the box. A couple of defenders kind of being attracted towards the ball, leaving Igamane completely free to kind of stroke it home. And I think that surprised me a little bit as I've not followed a lot of Aberdeen this season outside of the games against Rangers. But having Sivert Nielsen, who I was quite impressed in a midfield alongside Graham Shinney up at the game at Pittodrie a couple of months back, playing at centre back, he looked a bit out of place there. And I think Rangers certainly where we've struggled a lot in the last few weeks has been defensively, but up front, the likes of Igaman and Vaslav Cherny have been in good form, and I think Aberdeen struggled at times to be able to handle the movement of both of those players on Wednesday evening.
Yeah, Cherny has been an incredible player for us this year. Even when things haven't been going as much, he's really been the one that has stood out when results haven't necessarily went Rangers' way. But yeah, Nielsen's an interesting one because obviously he's at fault for the first goal. When he first arrived, I thought, you know what, this has been maybe one of our best signings. It's maybe not a sexy signing, but he looks really good. And just all of a sudden, he just looks tired. He's misplacing passes. Now, the guy's 33 and he's been given a 3-year contract. And I didn't really realise that till recently. And had I realised that at the time, I would have went, why are we giving a 3-year contract to someone who's 33? But when he arrived, he looked great, and it seems that it's went backwards, like a lot of Aberdeen has, unfortunately, because a lot of it at the start of the season looked great, and then we've seemed to have went backwards.
Yeah, obviously Aberdeen were able to field a couple of their January signings, and I think it's evident that Dave Cormack has been very much looking to buy into Jimmy Tilley and allow him to obviously have some recruitment in the January window to fill in some of the gaps that are obviously been there over the course of the last couple of months. He's kind of gone back to what he knows with the signing of Jeppe Ockels, who's a player who played for him before on loan, I think, from Preston, and a couple of kind of fairly rugged-looking defenders. But I think from the outside, what Aberdeen are really short of at the moment is proper goal-scoring threat. Obviously, Bojan Majowski's a big loss, I think, at the moment, but they've not really been able to replace him. And I think especially since the injury to Aberdeen's top goal scorer at the beginning of the season, Gay, who was on absolute fire, they've not really been able to find the back of the net with any form of kind of regularity since then, despite the likes of Kevin Nisbet and Duke having decent records in the Scottish League. They're just not looking a threat at the moment.
Yeah, I think with Aberdeen's January window, I think in this recent period of games, we've actually realised how weak and vulnerable at the back Aberdeen were. So the main priority was getting some defenders in. We've lost a couple through injury, suspension as well, and maybe just not being up to scratch. That was the key priority. And I think, Aberdeen will go on and kick on and be better defensively. We've seen improvements there despite the mistakes that happened yesterday. Will we get a striker in the January window? Again, we've been lucky with the injury of Papa Gay. Kevin Nisbet hasn't quite came and done it as I'd hope he would have, and then Sockler's went and been injured as well. January's a difficult time to maybe get the top goal scorer that you're looking for, and I wouldn't want Aberdeen just to jump into somebody for the sake of getting another striker through the door. It needs to be the right person for me. So if that's a longer term project, I can be understanding of that. But I know that it is a big thing for Aberdeen at the minute.
Yep. One player who I was really impressed with on Wednesday night was Yanis Hadji, who was, for my record, the man of the match on the night. I know the Sky gave it to likes of Hamza Igamane, but I thought that Yanis Hadji, particularly first half, his level of passing was just on a different level to anyone else that was on the pitch at the time. And I think it's testament to someone like Yanis Hadji, who at the beginning of the season was persona non gratis at Rangers. Face didn't fit, was told that he didn't have a future, and how he's been able to turn around the season so far to actually be one of the first names on the team sheet just now, and a key player, I think, for Philippe Clement, particularly at Ibrox. I think away from home, we all know Rangers struggles, and we'll certainly come on to that a little bit later. But at home at Ibrox, it's now 31 points from 33 in the league, and someone like Yanis Hadji, who is that link man between the midfield and the strikers, particularly when we've got a striker in Igamane who's in great form at the moment. Hadji's vision and playing the passes last night, very unfortunate, I think, with a shot of his own that hit off the crossbar. There was a great shot that Ross Doohan saved from Hamza Igamane that was travelling, and it could have been a very, very different story come the half time than just going in 1-up. But Hadji, I thought Aberdeen couldn't really get close to him, and that was surprising to me because Graham Shinney in these games is always very combative and gets in and around the players, but I felt the game kind of bypassed Shinney a little bit last night, and he wasn't the usual kind of authoritative presence that he normally has in these sorts of matches.
I think with Shinnie this year, obviously he's someone else that's getting older as well. He had a great game at Hearts against Hearts on the Sunday, and I was like, right, this is the Shinnie we know. And then we see him again in the midweek, and it's maybe almost not enough recovery time for the guy. A lot of people are saying he's past it. There's definitely still a good player in there, but fitness wise, leg wise, he's maybe not really up for playing as many games as he would be required, unfortunately. But yeah, Hadji definitely flying yesterday, and credit to him. As you're saying, he's came on and shown that went and proved himself, and he's shown that.
Yep. In terms of another kind of big main talking point out of the game yesterday, before we get into the two late goals, but the challenge by Leighton Clarkson on Ridvan Yilmaz, which I know has courted quite a bit of controversy, the likes of Dermot Gallagher on Sky Sports today stating that he believed that it could have been given a red card. It was one that Kevin Clancy on the evening gave a yellow for. Nick Walsh on the VAR took the quickest of quick looks at it and decided nothing to see here, stuck with the yellow for me, it highlights once again the inconsistencies of Scottish refereeing, and that it was very similar in terms of a challenge made by Doohan Sterling in a game against Aberdeen a couple of seasons back, where he received a red card, the red card that Yanis Hadji got earlier in the season against St Johnstone. You look back at Motherwell, a red card that their player got in a challenge against Adamida against Celtic, all fairly similar to Leighton Clarkson's one last night. Obviously, I'm looking at it with slightly blue tinted spectacles, and you'll be looking at it with red tinted ones. But I think he was maybe slightly fortunate to get away with that one last night.
I suppose you can look at it from either point of view. If it was your team, you'd be saying, "Oh, it was definitely a yellow." If it was against your team, you say it's definitely a red. I think it was probably one of those. So it's difficult to not be biased, is it? But I think you're right in what you're saying with the inconsistencies in refereeing this year. Some of the times it's been taken to make VAR decisions, and then people have decided that that's not the right VAR decision. But to be fair, give it to Willie Collum. Any time that there has been a mistake, he has came out and said, "Look, we've got this one wrong. We'll work on it and we'll try again." And actually, VAR is still fairly new in the game. It's not as high tech as VAR as you would get in the Prem, things like that. So I do think these things have to be considered, and the referees are under some amount of pressure because it's every week, every game now they're being scrutinized in the media for not being good enough. So I feel for them in that sense, but I know a lot of people are anti-referee.
Yeah, it was one of those. I think maybe an orange card, if such a thing existed, it was kind of a bit in the middle. But for me, I think Leighton Clarkson's a player who I've always been quite impressed with. That seemed to be someone that's got a great deal of ability, and for whatever reason, not quite kicked on. I think certainly looking from the outside, looking online today, and obviously Twitter's never a great scope of popular opinion, but it tends to be a lot of people just shouting at walls. But Leighton Clarkson doesn't appear to be the most kind of popular man from an Aberdeen perspective at the moment. That he's not quite delivering for you.
Yeah, I think fans have been disappointed with him, which I would have to agree. In comparison to last season, where we thought, "Oh, this boy's a player," we really wanted to get him signed, and we've done that. I think he has shown some good stuff throughout the season, but it's been inconsistent. Like a lot of the Aberdeen team has, it has been inconsistent. In games where he really has to dig in deep, it's not really quite his style of game, and he doesn't maybe fit into the 11 quite the same in those scenarios. But he was very unlucky, nearly getting that goal over the top of his last night.
Yes, certainly that was really the closest that Aberdeen came, and it was actually pretty good goalkeeping from
Yeah,
Liam Kelly
totally.
to get back on his line and get it. But yeah, one of those that if he'd maybe been another couple of yards forward, then maybe might not have got back quite so much. But when a shot from 50 yards is the closest that Aberdeen are getting to goal scoring, then it probably highlights just how much out of the game they were and an attacking presence. But when it's only 1-0 and
Yeah, could have changed it.
Rangers are chances after chance after chance that Ross Doohan makes save after save. And I think given the amount of praise that Dimitar Mitov has got this season for being a goals for Aberdeen, but Ross Doohan's actually proving quite an able deputy. And if it hadn't been for him being on his toes last night, you could have been looking at it being quite a heavy one. A few really good saves down at his near post to deny Cherney, Danilo as well with it. Obviously, we spoke about the save he made from Igamane early on in the first half as well. So he certainly kept the score line down for Aberdeen last night, but that's been a story of Rangers season as just not being prolific enough, not taking really clear chances. And I've got to be honest, as when the board went up for 7 minutes injury time and it was only 1-0, you were fearing the worst because it's not the first time that Rangers have given away a nonsense in injury time and thrown away 2 points.
No, totally. And Aberdeen towards the end, they were trying to push for that goal, and obviously, once that second one goes in, it kind of falls apart a bit. And the third one, oh, boy has a nightmare falling over. I watched that again earlier, and I was like, oh, that's not what you want to be doing. But yeah, also credit to Doohan. He had a great game on Sunday, saved the penalty against Hearts. And last night as well, some good saves in there. Could have been a different story. Normally when your first team keeper goes injured, you're like, oh, I'm not really sure about my second keeper. But actually, I'm quite confident in Doohan. The only thing I would say is he's maybe a little bit slower playing out from the back than Meaty-Off is, but that's something that probably can be worked on and developed in time.
Yep, you spoke about those two injury time goals. Leon Balogun coming in off the bench. Another story of Rangers season this year is injuries after injury. Robin Proper going off, Danilo going off at half time. Both of them, I think, looking like they're going to be kind of risks for the weekend as Fraser were in the Scottish Cup. So maybe not a great deal of point in risking either of them for that one. But again, more injuries at the back for Rangers. But Leon Balogun coming back, able to come off the bench, and before he gets his goal, he could have maybe had another couple. One coming off the post and another one where it was a kind of a good save, and he finally got there. And it was a really good piece of play from young Clinton Inshallah, who's starting to grow into a Rangers jersey now in his third appearance. I thought he looked very assured last night for Rangers, particularly on the ball. I think he wasn't massively tested in terms of attacking threat, but able to kind of test his defensive wares. But going forward, I thought he was very composed on the ball, looked confident, starting to really show as if he feels he belongs in that first team position. And it was a delicious cross that he was able to dig out to Big Leon Balogun at the back post, who was able to kind of head it home. It's one thing that Rangers miss when Balogun and particularly John Suter aren't there is a kind of physical presence, both at the back and up top. Set pieces this season have been abysmal from Rangers. The fact that their corners are just always not a threat, but Big Balogun coming on kind of changes that a little bit and does give you someone that can provide goals, and he took that header really well.
Yeah, I totally agree. Those last couple of goals in the dying minutes of the match just kind of really cemented the evening that Aberdeen had, and Rangers quite rightly came out on top.
Yep, Cyriel Dessers sealing the points with a goal in the dying minutes. May well be Cyriel Dessers' last goals as a Rangers player. It's something he mentioned in his post-match comments, that he wants to stay at Ibrox, but he understands that he's no longer first choice striker there, and there is interest in him from a number of teams across Europe, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Cyriel Dessers move on. But what he did give you last night was a sight of what he can do coming in off the bench, taking advantage of the slip from Tottenham loanee Dorrington, who slips on the Ibrox turf and basically allows Dessers a kind of free run on goal. Lovely finish, I think, from Dessers. But yeah, it kind of summed up, I think, Aberdeen's evening with Dorrington lying on the deck.
Yeah, absolutely did. I felt for the guy because obviously it was his debut as well, and there's nothing much you can do when you fall on your arse, is there?
But yeah, all in all, I think 3-0 in the light of day looks as if it was a fairly comfortable evening for Rangers. It didn't feel it at points, just due to only having that one goal and not taking chances. But I think if you break it down in terms of the number of shots on goal, the number of saves that Doohan made, the kind of dominance that Rangers had, very much a kind of fair result. And for Aberdeen, it's now 12 games without a win domestically. Elgin City at the weekend in the Scottish Cup, and surely that gives the opportunity, I think, for Jamie Tilleen to get a victory and start to build a little bit of momentum. But I suppose it's not all that long ago that Darvel happened, and you can't really take too much for granted.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, the Darvel thing just sits in the back of your mind, and you're like, surely not, we can't go through this again. However, like I said earlier, we have seen bits of improvement in the Aberdeen team this past week. Obviously, no disrespect to Elgin, but we're obviously going to a team that's lower down in the leagues, and you would hope that this is a chance for Aberdeen to get a couple of goals, gain confidence, come away with a clean sheet, and just go on and kick on from there. That is the hope. Obviously, that little doubt sits in the back of your mind, but I would like to say I'm confident for an Aberdeen win on Saturday. Oh,
Big Big thank you to Beth for joining us on this one. Don't forget, you can join us over on patreon.com/the fourth official for more match analysis, all of our exclusive interviews, long form columns. And on Saturday morning, we've got an exclusive interview that I recorded on Tuesday night with Davy McKinnon. People that are a little bit older than me will remember Davy McKinnon playing all across Scottish football in the 1980s. A really interesting hour dropping on Saturday morning. So hopefully you can join us on that one over on our Patreon channel. You can join us for less than £3 a month. As always, a big thank you to you all for watching. We'll speak to you next time. Goodbye.